Hello, everyone. On today's episode, learning to market yourself and your skills in 2021 and beyond. Welcome to the ultimate crowdsource personal finance show. This is Choose FI. All right, guys, very excited to dive into this week's episode. And, normally we'd like to start off the episode usually by talking about me. Sometimes, sometimes every once, I know I'm going to try. I'm going to recover this. Sometimes talking about Brad every once in a while. But today we thought we would switch gears. Let's start this episode out by talking about Herbert and sharing Herbert's wins. And to help me with this, I have my good buddy Brad here with me today. How you doing, man?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. And yes, I like the self-awareness there yet again. We usually talk about me, but
Yeah.
dot, dot, dot.
I should write a song or something. It's incredible. It's an amazing amount of self-awareness I have. All right, here we go. So we just want to dedicate this whole post, this whole episode. This is to Herbert. And Herbert shared this in the group, says, retired at 56 years old, now 58 and full of life. Fire is the fountain of youth. And he's got a picture here, Brad. It's a picture at 56 and a picture at 58. You can see it in the Facebook group. And Herbert's looking great. I mean, he is getting younger, not older. And I love that he can attribute a piece of that to the fire life.
Yeah, this is amazing. Obviously, it's hard to do visuals here on the podcast, but we'll have a link in the show notes clearly. But yeah, Herbert at 56 looks, like an older guy. He's probably been sitting at a desk for a number of years. And Herbert at 58, first off, could pass for 40. And second off, looks like he's ready to go, I don't know, run a triathlon, right? Or, compete in a triathlon or some such, right? So, yeah, I mean, the fountain of youth. I think that's one of the cool benefits, right? Like it's clear that FI is about getting your finances right? I mean, financial independence. But Jonathan, we've said for a very long time that this podcast would have been about 20 episodes if it was just about the nuts and bolts of money. It is so much more than that. It's almost entirely more than that, right? Like the nuts and bolts of money, once you figure it out, that's the easy part. But then you've got the space, like Herbert has here, to focus on what's important to you. And that usually means relationships, that means health, that means travel, that means community, that means giving back. All of these things, right? That when you're busy, when you're in that grind, you just simply don't have the time or mental energy to even think about, not less focus on. And yeah, this is a very important reminder for all of us that this is the important stuff. It truly is.
In saying that, as much credit as I want to give to Herbert on this one, he's not the only person to discover this. Brad, I think that you, as well as many other people in the financial independence community, have had that similar epiphany. And sometimes we don't actually give ourselves credit for it. But if we were to slow down and just take a minute to think, or go look at some documentation, a la pictures from several years ago, we're like, I feel like time is not working against me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, Jonathan, that is actually a super timely observation because I just picked up a picture. My older daughter is about to celebrate a pretty important birthday here. And I picked up a picture from 12 years ago when she was a little kid. And my first thought was, of course, oh my goodness, how little she was. I remember that. But my second thought very quickly in a self-centered, vain way was, holy cow, I look terrible. Like absolutely terrible. And I was probably 29 or just turned 30 then. So, I mean, I should have looked better then, in a perfect world than I do at nearly 42 here. But I mean, it's not even a contest. It's crazy. Like, a little bit of hair, obviously, but other than that, I'm in the best shape of my entire life right now. I feel fantastic. I feel like I could sprint at a moment's notice. I could run and jump. I could play sports. I could do, I can live life. And I don't know if I necessarily, maybe I would have thought that in my mid-20s, but I don't know if it was necessarily true. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, very timely, Jonathan.
Well, on my end, I feel like I survived college and much of my 20s just with lots and lots of caffeine. Lots and lots of caffeine. And it has been, as I've kind of eliminated a lot of other vices from my life, it has actually been something that I've like maintained, albeit a little bit less and a little bit higher quality. But I would say that even more recently, like a month or two back, I just felt like it just wasn't like working for me
Hmm.
like anymore. Like it wasn't, I was taking it, but I was drinking coffee once or twice a day, but it was just to get back to like even. And I made the decision to you're gonna have to help me with this. Is it get off the wagon, get back on the wagon? I'm not sure. I decided to go with a cat. Yeah, really, Brad. Honest, genuine question. What is it?
Yeah,
What
I don't really know here. Well, I always get confused first off, and then second off, it depends. Right? Are we saying it's a good thing or a bad thing to be off coffee? I guess you're arguing it's a good thing to be off coffee, right?
maybe. I don't know. You'll hear at the end of the story. I'm still conflicted about it, but I made the decision. Well, you solved that. We're gonna give our audience. Listen, if you come away with one thing at the end of this episode, you will know the appropriate use case for on the wagon, off the wagon. We'll cover that. Brad's going to solve that for us while I'm continuing this story. I made the decision I needed to take a break, a coffee break, and I was kind of concerned because I've been consuming it consistently for several years about getting like tension headaches, which have happened anytime in the past when I've tried to kind of wind down. And I made this decision to really try to just overload my system with like vitamins and minerals. And so I just started drinking juice, fruit juice, fresh squeezed fruit juice for like a week or two. And I was actually amazing. I was able to completely eliminate the caffeine, a little bit of rocky days, but I was able to completely eliminate the caffeine. And I actually stayed off the caffeine for somewhere between 30 to 60 days. I was very proud of myself, but I think I always knew that in my world, I just love coffee. I love it. And as of this week, I started enjoying it again. And so, am I back on the wagon, Brad? Can you give us a an
Yeah,
answer
so
here?
I just looked it up. I've got a couple sources here. Grammarist.com says to be on the wagon is to refrain from drinking, and to be off the wagon is to be drinking, usually again after a period of sobriety. So obviously this is generally with alcohol, but yeah, we'll extend it here. So you are off the wagon,
It
I
depends
guess.
on, so it really depends on whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. You first have to determine whether or not the consumption is a positive or a negative. Because it's about a habit, right? Are you doing this habit? Are you not doing this habit? And clearly, what you hear is the conflict. I can't make up my mind. Does my ideal world involve coffee every single day? And in this case, at this exact moment, it does in moderation as long as I'm not experiencing toxicity or a scenario where I'm dependent. So, with that in mind, I would say that I'm on the wagon, meaning a good thing, Brad.
Yes, sure. So people are going to be yelling at their phones
You can
listening.
send all of your feedback to
Yeah.
feedback@choosefi.com.
Jonathan, I'm going to probably get 100 emails. So yeah, two idiots trying to figure out what they're talking about. But yeah, we'll go with
There's gonna be a scientist that's gonna will lean in with the definitive answer. Like they're gonna solve this for us. We will read the best email, the best, most definitive answer to this on an upcoming show.
yeah, please be kind. I actually read the emails. Please be kind.
Oh man. All right, Herbert, we're celebrating you, man. Congratulations, brother. And I hope everybody takes a minute and says, where am I at? Am I younger today than I was before? Do I attribute that to reclaiming my space, reclaiming my most precious non-renewable resource, and reducing stressors from my life? And if not, if it's a wake-up call, then let's do something about it. Let's start building this out. Now, Brad, I want to switch gears just a little bit here. And we wanted to talk today around really learning to market ourself and our skills in 2021. And it's conversations that we've mentioned briefly in the past, but I think it's time to spend a little bit more time here today. And I think one of the things we said was if you're looking for a job or you're looking to transfer industries and maybe you're getting advice from friends and family and someone's telling you, well, if you want to get a new job, all you need to do is just print off copies of your resume and just go knock door to door, just make a bunch of phone calls. That's it. Dust off your resume. I think it's like woefully not appreciating the new world that we're living in. And while that might work, it might work. If it's not working, you should recognize that things have changed. The way that people find jobs have changed, and just mass sending applications on monster.com is just really no longer the way. There is much more of an emphasis on your network. What have you done and your skill set, but more than just the skills that you have, how you market them. So I thought what we could do today is just kind of give you guys an experiment by talking about skills, and then we'll layer onto this like what that would practically mean in the context of getting a job. So Brad, to put this back on you for a second, before we even go down the path that I'm choosing, I'm curious, do you agree with what I just said in terms of this is where we are? I mean, the advice that what was the advice that you were given as someone that wanted to succeed at life about how to land a job?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was first getting my job, a lot of it was solely, like you said, it was resume dependent. And that meant everything from literally having the right format of the resume. I mean, could you imagine something as stupid as that, like determining who's going to hire you? Like what font you use, what format? Like that seems like a bygone era, right? But that was actually important, down to, of course, like your GPA and where you went to school and what activities you did and all these things. Like, especially for a first job, like there's not all that much there that's useful, but yet it was important nonetheless, right? So it then required people to maybe, I don't know, I don't even know what the phrase would be, but just like accumulate things just for their resume, maybe, right? Like not that you had a passion for it or that it meant something to you, but almost akin to like it was probably, and I frankly don't know if this has changed, but in that same bygone era, it was the same for college applications. It was nobody really cared, if you gave your heart and soul to something. It was just, hey, do you have 3 or 4 super impressive looking things on your resume, right? So yeah, that does ring true to me, Jonathan, for sure. Is the succinct way that I want to say this.
All right. So what we could do instead is still you and I are tied to the old system to some degree because when we were applying for jobs, because keep in mind we're entrepreneurs now, right? So like I don't have to get someone's permission. I just go build it, basically. But in the old system, when I was applying for a job, that was exactly what we came through and it's what we knew to do. And we were mediocre at it. We were not the ones that were outperforming, getting whatever job we wanted. We got kind of the same results as our peers at the time. So, what would it look like to do it smarter? So, Brad, let's start with kind of where you are now. What I want to point out is you actually have done a lot. So, it's kind of at a disadvantage to use you as an example now. But I do think, just for the sake of like people thinking through what skills they possess, let's go through your career as an accountant. And then let's go through your stint now as an entrepreneur. And let's just kind of aggregate, brainstorm here, just a list of skills. Let's throw them down on a sheet of paper. And we don't need to
Okay.
glam them up at this point or anything, but just like, what is it that you would attribute a skill that you possess, using, just keep it super simple.
Interesting. Okay, so you want me to go through like my career path? Is
What's
that
your
what you're telling
talent
me?
stack? What is your talent
Okay.
stack? Yeah.
This sounds like an old school Jonathan sandbagging of Brad here.
Yes, it is a little
Nice.
bit.
Nice. Okay, so you're talking pre-entrepreneurship or currently?
You can go any direction you want. I would like for you just to think through, like, you've been in the space, you've been in the corporate space, you've been in the entrepreneur space. You were able to pull a lot of the corporate skills that you had into the entrepreneur space, the aggregate of this body of work that you've done. Don't tell me what you've done yet, but just kind of what you can do.
Okay. So I think the accounting background and understanding how to create financial statements and how to do accounting entries. I know that's obviously served me well both in my accounting career, but even more so in entrepreneurship. So I know you're not looking for for exact explanations here, but
But this is really important. I don't want
yeah,
individuals that you don't have to fill it into a certain number of words. You don't need to
yeah,
everybody should be going through this exercise if they want to do this with us. We're just brainstorming, we're writing stuff down. If you're not a writer, then we're just recording our answers to these questions just to have them. We're going to analyze this
yeah.
later, but it's just like get all these thoughts out. Who are we if we were being distilled down to skills?
So okay, I would say communication,
Yep.
certainly email communication. I think is a significant talent of mine. I guess now at this point, verbal communication is something that I would not have ever given myself credit for, but I think clearly that's got to rank up there. I think being able to talk to people, to convince and compel in the best possible way, not in the negative sense, but just like Yeah, Jonathan, I'm struggling here, but maybe you can put some words to it.
Let me
But
try. Let me try. You kind of let me take exactly where you're at and add just a little bit of nuance because this is another thing. Like work with your partner. Like if you
yeah,
get stuck, do what you can, and then set up your, whoever this other person that can know something about you. Can they
right.
add some
Because
more onus?
sometimes it's easier for somebody else. I have some awareness, obviously, but yeah, to your point, it can be easier for other people who are close to you.
Communication sounds like such a soft skill, but what can you actually do? Well, communication allows us to take an idea, communicate it to others to turn it into action and get results, right? So this is leadership here. So I can take an objective and then I can break that objective down to the parts that need to be accomplished and I can communicate that to a team and then I can hold that team accountable for those results and I can follow through on that. That's one form of communication. So, working with the team directly, I was responsible for various projects and got these results, but also public speaking. I can take the overall vision and of an organization, and I have given several talks at this level and at various sizes with these parameters. It can be I can turn goals into a presentation. I can weave story into my presentation. So there's the communication is used a lot of different ways. It's verbal and it's written as you pointed out, and it's also intrapersonal. So you can have you have team members that are communicating with each other, but they're butting heads. I can act as a liaison to each and figure out why, because most people want the same net goal, but they butt heads if they don't have these communication skills. I can then align team members' goals, even if they're not able to communicate directly when it goes through me, stuff gets sorted and we move the organization forward. So I can intuitively kind of understand what, and I'm a good listener, right? The best part of communication is, I'm not saying me, by the way, guys, I'm a moderately okay, sometimes bad listener. Brad's a very good listener. You should just know that. But so when I'm talking from Brad's perspective, I'm a good listener. So I can listen to what two parties are saying and understand where they're coming from. And then I can help those ideas merge so we're all working together. That's massively, massively important. And just thinking through that communication is so important for every business. If you just say, well, I'm a good speaker, I'm a good talker, got a lot of great words, nobody cares. But if you can actually work through what does that mean in terms of a skill set, why would that be valuable? We're still not doing anything with it at this point, but we want to just be very clear on why it's not just a soft skill. Soft skills turn to hard profits. Soft skills turn to real numbers. It moves things forward. So, Brad, we can keep going down the list there, but just to kind of
Yeah,
spend some time on that
no,
one for a
that's
second.
that's interesting because it did bring up something, and this is hard. It's funny because we are truly doing this on the fly here in the best possible way because this is how the exercise would go in real life, right? So like you were saying that, and I'm thinking like, yeah, like I believe that I have a level of empathy and listening skills that allows me to connect with people, to understand where they're coming from, what their problems are, and help them move forward successfully. And I think I've seen that, just in our own organization that like I'm able to, like you said, bridge those gaps that there's ultimately it's just a miscommunication issue. Like there's no actual substantive like calamity going on, but people talk past each other. And sometimes you do need that connector. So yeah, that probably would be closer to the top of the list than I frankly would not have included it on the list until you just brought that up. But that's probably a pretty significant one.
So if we keep working through that, what that actually is in many cases actually translates to sales. So sales ultimately is two people being on the same page about the value, right? So when someone makes the decision or not to buy or to not buy, it's because one person doesn't value it the same as the person that's presenting it. So if someone appreciates the value and says, yeah, that's definitely worth it. Wow. Then that actually translates now to sales. And it's all about it's alignment, incentive alignment. Do we value this the same? So that is communication. Now you have a sales skill, right?
Yeah, that's cool. Right. Because a lot of sales is just it's understanding someone's problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? And proposing a fix for it. So yeah, that rings very, very true.
Okay. And I fundamentally did not like as a naive or as a young adult, I very much viewed sales as you tricking someone into buying something that they didn't want or didn't need. That's what sales was. Even reading like more like a Zig Ziglar book or something like that. It was kind of like, what's the kind of spammy thing that you can say at the end of the conversation that will suddenly convert the sale versus not convert the sale? Like, this is and that was a lack of appreciation or lack of understanding on my part as a young adult compared to now, which is the best salesperson is someone that knows how to listen and understand what the other person's want and then can be very honest about, do I have something that will fill that need? If the answer is no, then the best salesperson would say, you shouldn't buy this. This isn't going to help you. The salesperson that can recognize that is going to be unbelievably successful. And so when you have salespeople that are making 600,000, $1 million a year, which by the way, there are salespeople that absolutely make those types of numbers. They are ones that have a great product and they position, because sales is a skill that translates to any industry. They found a product that for them, they know the power of this product to improve someone's life or to meet that need. And then they're connecting that with the individuals and they're helping them understand or appreciate that. When you have both of those coming together, that is sales in a nutshell. And we could,
Yeah.
this isn't a sales episode, but it really is important to point that out.
And you can't overstate how important that trust is.
Yeah.
Right. Like when that person because like you said, incentives, right? Like, man, when someone's incentive is to ultimately sell something and they make money and then they say, oh no, this is not for you. Goodness, you'll trust that person forever.
Yep.
Right. Like that is such a massive, massive thing. But people can tell when you're just trying to scam them or spam them or whatever you want to call it, just make a quick buck, as opposed to making a long-term relationship, right? And you talk about skills. Like I don't know where that goes on the list here, Jonathan, but like creating long-term win-win relationships, like you would never put that on a resume, but damn if that isn't important and critically important.
I don't know.
I mean, how many times
It might not fit on a resume, but does it fit on our skill list? Does it get woven into our conversations and our interviews when we're having conversations about transactional versus relational interaction? Absolutely. Absolutely fundamentally, which is why I never liked the resume concept to begin with. 5 pages of bullet points doesn't mean anything. But when you understand skills and you understand how this conversation, now we're starting to understand, appreciate who we are as a person potentially, or who we would like to become in the future, the skills that we might like to possess, how we would start to like actually make decisions on the skills that we're going to build, understanding what role they might place in an organization. If we want, if an organization will be lucky enough to have us. Right. And so this is it's a thought-provoking exercise, and it's meant to push us to kind of the perimeters of the experience we've had and also guide us with where we want to go next as we develop our talent stack.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, right, those are those type of skills. And then I guess, if I was going down my list here, I would get into just like random kind of, but again, the talent stack, random one-off skills that I picked up that like all kind of coalesce into a set of skills that are pretty unusual, which, again, with the accountant's background, thinking long-term, thinking with a FI mindset, and then having skills on how to create a website, how to, from soup to nuts, every aspect of buying the domain name to getting hosting, to running it, to having an email list, to knowing how to optimize that, how to split test different things, right? Both on websites and on emails, and how to, I've literally done everything on websites, from like we've talked about, like selling firewood storage racks, from like drop shipping and filing sales tax returns and state income tax, like all of these things, to creating a podcast that's been listened to tens of millions of times. Like all of that stuff, the importance of community and creating different avenues for people, like Facebook groups, just the sheer ownership, like creating social media posts that are recurring. Like I literally, like something as simple as that, like my recurring Friday morning post on, hey, what was the one thing you did this week? Like something like that, creating, not that I do this now, certainly, but like recurring Twitter posts or Instagram posts, like all that stuff those are skills that I possess. Mm-hmm. Now, again, like I'm not probably doing a lot of that stuff right now, but I would think I have a very unusually broad background in terms of understanding at a very high level all of the pieces that are needed to create like a digital a company in today's day and age.
Yep. And which means that every company in the world needs some or all of those skills. They do. Every company in the world, regardless of niche and what it is, needs some or all of those skills. So when you are sitting from that perspective and you appreciate that, when you if and when you are going to decide I want to get another job, you're kind of saying what type of work do I want to do? Not what does my degree allow me to do, which by the way is what every new grad is thinking about when they're using the old resume model. Well, I have a communications degree, so this means I could get this type of job, or this what can I apply for? What are the requirements of the business? What are they looking
Mhm.
for here? Like, no. When you position yourself you're over here, you're saying, what type of work would I like to do? And you're looking at this body and you're saying, I could bring this value to any organization. They'd be lucky to have me. Where would I like to focus my talents with this next chapter? And maybe that's a combination of of all these things that you've written down and more that we could brainstorm. It's what do I enjoy the most? That's probably going to be tilted toward that. What of all of those, what have the best compensation or the most flexible work requirements? That might be another one. What is the industry seems to be in the most demand right now? That might be another one. There's different ways to actually look at this, but it's fundamentally different than what does my degree give me permission to do?
Yeah, and you used that word allow a minute ago, right? Like that is such a loaded word, but it's such a critical one because that is where people are approaching this from.
Yep.
Hey, what do I have permission to do? What am I allowed to do? I mean, if there's a message of FI, it's you're allowed to do whatever you want.
What do you
You
want?
don't, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't have to follow the prescribed path that everybody else is just kind of blindly following. And I mean, so sorry, I'm getting a little riled up about about the word allow, Jonathan,
I'll keep
but
using it because we like it when you're in this place. It's needed. People need to hear it.
yeah, you can flex, right? Like that's the cool thing about having options, right? So anyway, total side tangent for not exactly germane to what you're talking about here, but damn if
100%
that is an
germane.
important
100%
distinction.
germane. Yes. Yes. I never used germane in a sentence before, but I'm going to continue with
You're welcome.
this. Okay. So this is like phase one, right? It's recognizing that our life skill means something. Our body of our work is not just the last job that we had. It's what that job allowed us to actually do. When you ask someone, what do you do? They always give you a title. And the problem is we limit our skills to our job title instead of the underlying skills that that job title afforded us the ability or the time to learn. And if we're saying we're in college, you say, "What do you? I'm a student." Oh, what are you going to get your degree in? And then we limit our body of skills to a single word degree, as opposed to what are the underlying skills and why would that be valuable for an organization? So the next layer of this exercise, once you've actually mapped this out and you're having fun with this and you realize this really is freeing, this move out of this. I mean, and as a point of diagnostics, maybe you could say, well, Brad has a lot of stuff. I have nothing. Well, great. Let's start building it. None of these require anybody to give you permission. You can start doing these on your own. Brad, start build a website on his own. And you don't even none of the things that Brad mentioned really required having a podcast that reached millions of people. You can just go do it. You can go figure out how to do it on your own. If nobody ever listens, you still are building the skill. If you're still, you know what I mean? Like you can do this in a sandbox just for the pure joy of autonomy, mastery, purpose, building your skill stack.
Yeah, and to be perfectly clear, I am not world class at any of those things, right? So this is not like, oh, I've become world class at 20 different things. I mean, even Jonathan, honestly, even as I'm saying that, even as we're going through this exercise, I'm feeling some level of imposter syndrome. Like that's just maybe that's, my own mental hangups, but even just saying it out loud as if these are world class skills. They're not, but that's not the point. And I know. And that is so important that everybody, like what we've talked about for 400 plus episodes on this podcast so many times, is that talent stack. It's that unique set of skills that you have that maybe, just maybe, nobody else on earth has that set of skills together. And you need to, instead of beating yourself up, like a lot of us, we beat ourselves up a lot. And instead of doing that yet again, turning it around and saying, like again, my imposter syndrome is rearing its ugly head, but I know enough to know that that's not the point. It's not the point of being world class. It's a point of I can add value, and I obviously do add value to our organization at a level that like nobody has that set of skills, and I can be valuable in a variety of ways that I think sometimes people are surprised, even Jonathan, when we're talking about like the people on our team who do the website and the SEO and the split test. Like I think people are frankly pretty surprised that I have those skills. and it's like that's kind of cool in a sense. But it's nice to be able to talk about that and also give somebody a different perspective. That again, I might not be world class at SEO or this kind of stuff, but my skill stack adds value, and that I believe from my core.
You could have thrown SEO in your skill stack. Are you world
Yeah.
class at SEO? No. So search engine optimization. How do I take a website with content and I take that exact content that was there before and I make it more appealing using known rules that are available for anyone that does research, make it more appealing to search engines like Google and Bing and Yahoo, et cetera. When someone searches for that, they're more the internet at large recognizes this as more relevant content and puts it higher up in search rankings. I cannot overstate how valuable that is for companies to have someone on their team that can make their content more valuable, thus with the capacity to reach more individuals. So I just wanted to point something out in the context of you were talking about, I have this imposter syndrome. When you have a college grad that is getting that first job, almost every employer that actually is valuing that degree recognizes that that student, that new grad, does not know how to do the job. But what they are hoping is that that degree symbolizes, in a best case scenario, that this person can learn stuff quickly, quicker than the person that didn't have the degree in this particular niche that they are hiring for. That's it. So let's just like, in terms of world class, there are individuals that are being hired at a expertise level, and at a certain rate, based on something that they have done, and it's one-to-one, and a person is hiring that expertise. But the vast majority of employers with open positions can't afford that rate, right? Because you have to pay for that. When someone is at the top of their game in a space, they have usually already been afforded raise after raise after raise because they are a revenue generator, right, for that organization. And so they're there. So they are, but going back to this new grad. So, and we could talk about new grads, but we could also just talking about someone shifting industries or getting back into the workforce after a long time out. But we're not talking about minimum wage. We're talking about a great income here, but translating into a new industry that they haven't been before, median wage, maybe slightly above median wage, but getting back into the industry. Most employers at that price point are looking for someone that they believe has done this and could quickly scale their skills to the employers actually need. The employer's looking for someone that can learn stuff. And Brad, just to play this example out, if we were to talk and you were to present these things, and I have this set of needs, it's like, oh, wow, that's actually matching up pretty closely to what I'm actually looking for. It would be great if you could tell me that you could do it. Absolutely do it. But as long as I came away with the sense that this is someone whose skills pretty closely match up to what I'm looking for, and this is a person that's always learning new stuff and is creating and adding to their skills, basically around what their employer needs, employers are going to be over the moon at that. So there's we're still missing two different pieces, right? The one piece was the individual now has this big list of things they might be able to do. There's two other pieces. One, how do we take those and we turn them into things that look attractive to an employer on paper or on social or on our branding statement, whatever that might look like our alternate to the resume, whatever that analog, instead of a resume, we're going to do this, or in addition to the resume, we're going to do this. There's how do we stand out? And then part two is how do we convey that in an interview? So I'm just going to real quickly address one thing in terms of like an interview tip for someone that recognizes that they're not imposter syndrome, or they recognize they're having imposter syndrome and they don't want to lie to an employer because in their own mind, they're like, I can do this. It's not my world's greatest thing. If an employer is talking about an actual skill set, usually they have something they need. And more often than not, the individual that they're interviewing will not have done that exact thing before. They might have, but more if they've done that exact thing. But if the individual can say, anytime that you're asked a question, and we know this as people that do interviews and talk on a podcast, every question is an opportunity to provide an answer. And the answer doesn't have to necessarily be a one-to-one answer to what the question was. You can take that question in any direction that you want. It's an art form, and it's the art of conversation. An interview is a conversation. If it's, have you ever done this before? No, sorry, I haven't. That's a very disappointing answer for an employer. You're not actually helping them. But what you could say is, I haven't actually had an opportunity to implement that one tactic, but I tell you what I did do on this project over here. We were prioritizing SEO on this page, and we were actually I was able to do a deep dive into this content, and we were able to get these results. Based on the scope of what you're requiring, I actually feel pretty confident that this is in my skill stack, and I could scale up really quick for that. So I tell you what, if you don't mind, after this interview, I'm going to do a little bit of additional research, and I'd love to follow up for you to let you know what I think would be the path forward with what with what you've requested. What you've just given to this potential employer is hope. It is very hard to find the exact person that can do something for what you want, right? So if you can get someone that at least appreciates empathy, to Brad's point, what was that initial skill set? I'm a great listener. So yes, the person wanted to have a yes, but even more than just getting a yes that might be a lie would be to get a nuanced no that says, no, but I'm a great listener. I actually understand what you want. And if we can't do it that way, I have 3 other alternatives that I've used successfully in other projects. And we could do some research to see what would be the best for your use case. Brad, it's incentive alignment.
Yeah. Yeah, not for nothing, but that is showing I'm the type of person that
Mm-hmm.
will go out and learn new things on my own,
Yep.
right? I'm the type of person that will follow up, right? I mean, as crazy as this sounds, like sometimes just things that you would take for granted as like table stakes, right? Of hey, you should show up and to work on time. You should, I don't know, complete your your assignments when you're assigned them, et cetera, and following up, right? Like all of these things. Like while that sounds like table stakes, there are a lot of people who struggle with that. A lot of people, a huge percentage. So I mean, even just proving that you're reliable, right? Like if you put I'm reliable on your resume, people would laugh you out of the room. But if they actually thought about it, it matters a lot more than they would otherwise think. And Jonathan, you just showed that, especially when you send that email back to that hiring manager in 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever you said you were going to, right? Like follow through and be reliable. Like, damn, you just proved that's the type of employee that you'll be. So do you have that skill today? No, but you just picked it up in 24 or 48 hours and you followed through. And that's a slam dunk. Like I wanted to hire you on the spot when you said that.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's the incentive alignment thing is really hard to overstate. And you should not be answering questions in a yes, no fashion in an interview, right? It's always an opportunity, no matter what the question was and how you answer it in the affirmative or negative, it's always an opportunity for you to demonstrate your reliability. Words that don't make as much sense necessarily on a resume are traits that can come through in an interview. Your reliability, your dependability, your zest for ongoing learning and optimizing and never being satisfied, but just kind of outperforming and coming up with creative solutions that maybe they haven't thought of. These are real opportunities for us to shine, but we have to get to that interview. How do we get to that interview? Because we have all these characteristics and skills that we don't even truly appreciate the value. And we know that we have these soft skills that can come through in the interview as we've really honed how we're going to demo this value to the employer. We still have to get it translated. And this is where really appreciating the power of social, the power of branding, the power of LinkedIn, and specifically how you market these skills that you possess and realize there really is an art form to how you exhibit or portray these skills. And while I am not going to take Brad's list of skills and turn all of them into phrases for you, I want to go ahead and, because you might say, well, I don't have the exact same skills, Brad. I don't have nearly as many skills as Brad's done. Look at all these things Brad's done. Let's take 2 that I saw in our group that just absolutely blew my mind. This is actually the Salesforce for Everyone group. And it's one of the best Salesforce groups on Facebook right now. You can find it. Just go to Facebook, search for Salesforce for Everyone. But someone posted this in the group and said, how would you write, I changed a light bulb on your resume? Right. So we just talked about all these amazing skills, but all you as an individual can come up with is, well, I can change a light bulb. Now, Brad, you don't need to answer this. That's a little bit too much of a sandbag, but I'm sure we could say, well, you take a lot of care and you unscrew it and you screw it back out. I don't know. You get a ladder, don't get a ladder. Make sure you don't. All right. I'm just trying to point out to people, there's an art form to this that neither you and I possess. It's just not what we aren't trained on this. We don't look for it. But if you recognize that this is valuable, what I'm about to read out, you can hone this skill craft. And how much easier, if we can do it for a light bulb, how much easier for everything that Brad just laid out in this thought experiment. So let's just read this and appreciate we're talking about. All I can do is change a light bulb. This was the answer in the post. Single-handedly managed the successful upgrade and deployment of new environmental illumination system with 0 cost overruns and 0 safety incidents. Hired. Or at least give the man the interview just on the premise alone. I got one more for you, and then let's do this one. I think it's really important for people to recognize, because so many people right now, after hearing all of that, are saying, you know what, look at all the stuff Brad's done. Like, I could never do all that. That's just, nope, this wasn't for me. I just want to, let's go down to basics and work your way up. This is a continuum, right? How about another one? I've shoveled driveways with snow, right? I've shoveled snow out of the driveways. And this was a comment from Justin in the group. And he said, risk mitigation consulting in regards to sub-freezing weather conditions on a sloping incline vehicle entry to residential dwellings.
Oh, goodness.
All right. So we're starting with, go ahead. You have no words.
Just the creativity, right, alone is that's an interesting skill just in and of itself. The creativity to come up with that and think about it a little bit differently, right?
I agree. But it's not, obviously these are very exaggerated examples, and it shows you the power of understanding the language, understanding the idea of marketing your skills. Your skills don't market themselves. They're trapped inside of whatever marketing vehicle you give permission to be. And most of us are stuck in imposter syndrome and we don't market ourselves. Brad has an insane number of skills. And if he needed a job, I hope that he would start with this light bulb and shoveling snow example and use that as motivation. If they can market their ability to change a light bulb, I can sure as heck market my ability to 10x a company's profits. I can sure as heck market my comprehensive skill set that's been built over a lifetime. And so if you're a stay-at-home dad or mom, or you've been out of the workforce for 5 or 6 years, what are those skill sets that you possess? I know you've done more than change a light bulb. I know you're underselling yourself. This is a thought experiment that can be transformative, and we can solve it in piecemeal. Anytime that you are going through the hiring process, it's a form of diagnostics. Anytime that you're building a business, there's got to be a form of diagnostics. You want to sell a product nobody buys, that doesn't mean that you have a bad business. It means you need to do some diagnostics and figure out where the point of failure was. If you're trying to get a job and you're not getting any, if nobody's looking at your resume as shown by LinkedIn, nobody's interested in your profile, that's a point of diagnostics. Nobody's giving you an interview, that's a point of diagnostics. Nobody's hiring you or giving you an offer, that's a point of diagnostics. We solve it where we are. But the first piece, if you're getting started, is just, well, what can I do? And that's a point of diagnostics. If you come to the end of this experiment and you're like, I have no skills except changing a light bulb, then what do we want to do next? What's keeping us from learning the skills? That is a point of diagnostics. Brad, this exercise is one that should be mandatory for people of all ages.
Yeah, it is extremely valuable. And it's gotten me thinking. Like I said, you kind of sandbagged me with this one, but in the best possible way, because like I've come away realizing that if this were me, even like you said, even with that skill set, I would need to go through that diagnostic. I would probably call it introspection, but we'll use them interchangeably here. It's like I would need to work on that because very sincerely, I would have that level of imposter syndrome. So I think most people are going to experience that on some level. And you hear those amazing, shoveling and light bulb, and like on some level, like my first instinct is, oh, that sounds spammy, or it's just lipstick on a pig. But that's not the point. Like those are cute. Those are super cute. But it's that you need to work on, what are you actually bringing to the table? And you have a variety of skills that you are simply not giving yourself credit for. I know I'm not giving myself credit for the variety of skills that I have. So I suspect strongly that most people out there are not either. But you need to sit down and you need to have those hours and figure out like, hey, what is it that I bring to the table that is really unique and unusual? From, like you said, those soft skills to very specific, job specific skills, right? Like the whole host of those things, they all matter. It's not just things that you, in the historic sense, would put on your resume. So, Jonathan, even like you said, the conversation, right? Like if you're in an interview and you just answer with monosyllabic, yes, no,
Happens
right? Like
all the time. All the time.
Yeah. Like think about a skill that we've learned here, which is almost akin to improv comedy, right? It's like the yes and, like setting somebody else up for success just conversationally. Like that's a skill that I'm not sure how I would quantify, but like you can bring that to almost every single interaction you have in life. Right? Like we even talk about it. Like sometimes when we're very forceful in the stop, we call it a hard stop. And then it's like,
thanks for the hard stop, Brad. Really didn't give any room to run there. Yeah, sorry, dude.
Yeah, I mean, and it's terrible. And how many fewer times do we do that now than we used to? Right? Like we think about that all the time when we're having conversations with each other, and that extends to our real life. You just know it. Like, and that kind of thing. Like your pivot on that question, right? The interviewer asks the question, so have you done X, right? Like very specific, pointed. Like this is not about like BSing people. This is again about, hey, I might not have that precise skill at this moment, but I can damn well learn it and I can follow up.
Yep.
Right? Like that's what you proved. And that to me as an employer is vastly more important than do you have that one skill and only that one skill, right? I want to know, do you have the ability to learn? Do you have the interest to learn? Are you going to follow up? Are you going to do what you say you were going to do? Right? Like those are the things that matter to me. So I learned way more about you, right? Like if we were going through this, like I would have learned way more about you in a positive light by you saying no, but than if you had just said yes, right? I learned virtually nothing about you if you just said yes.
Yes, I can do
You
that.
might be
Yes, I can
right.
do that.
Sure. I believe I
I
could do it.
guess I
You might
believe
be
you.
lying. You might be truthful. You might be great at it. You might have learned it yesterday. I have no freaking idea.
What if they said, "Oh, well, tell me how"? Oh, crap.
Right. Yeah.
You got me.
Okay.
You caught me. You caught the tater. Okay. So this is something that we're very passionate about. It's something that will be transformative. It's a life skill that you need to start teaching. You need to learn. Your kids need to learn. This is the future. I just don't want to leave you hanging if you got really scared off by the creative writing on like how look at that person able to talk really cool way about shoveling snow and light bulbs. I want to give you just two real quick points, and then we'll wrap this thing up. The first is you don't need to have all these words. Do not need to be the first time these words have existed in the universe. So if you are great at copywriting, let me encourage you to do what I would consider forensics. So we just talked about diagnostics. Let's talk about forensics. Let's go see what other people are doing. Let's go be inspired by other people in our space. Let's go look at public resumes and at public brands. So people put their resume, they put their body of work and experience on LinkedIn. So how do people find people that have skill sets? They do searches for specific skills, and they probably have keywords that you don't have access to. Keywords are very important when you're talking about scraping, the millions of people that are on LinkedIn. So if you're very good at copywriting and writing emails, let's try to put copywriting in as a search on LinkedIn. Find people that are expressing that skill set and see what their light bulb summary is, right? What words and terms are they using to describe their skill, and say, do I feel comfortable with that? We have this list that we came up with as a conversation and we've organized it. And now we're saying, now how are other people demonstrating that? If you're going to steal like an artist. Find 10 people that are demoing their copywriting skills and say, okay, I kind of see what's going on in common here. What are the adjectives that are being used to describe the copywriting skill? What would my version of that look like? If at the end of that you have something, but you feel stuck, just recognize that someone asked the question, how would you write I can change a light bulb on your resume, and someone else answered. That's a point of service. There are people that are very creative. So now you've done all this legwork. You've come up with your skill stack. You've thought through your first version, what you could come up with in terms of what you would want to communicate. Hand it off to someone that's really good at pack. Pay them. Pay them for their ability to rewrite this in a way that makes sense in 2021 and beyond, and see what comes back. If it comes back and you feel like parts of it are spammy, parts of it are amazing, keep the amazing parts and dial down the spammy parts until you feel comfortable with what it says, and then proceed forward. It's another point of taking forensics, merging with diagnostics, forcing action, getting the results. I hope you came away inspired and said, you know what? I'm not going to sit in a job that's toxic and it's straining me. I'm going to go through this exercise and I am going to reclaim this year and the years to follow. And I will always look back at this episode for being the one that forced me out of my comfort zone and forced me to take action. Brad, I know we start these episodes sometimes and you just say, fine, sandbag me. Let's see where this goes. What do you think about the value of this episode going into the rest of this year and beyond?
Yeah. I think there's great value here. I think like I said a few minutes ago, like just that level of introspection is critical because I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. A, B, I don't think we ever do the exercise of what are those skills, right? And that's a noxious combination, right? You don't even consider what skills you have, and what skills you do have, you don't give yourself credit for, right? So like just having a better understanding of self, I think is always important. And then you can move forward. And you even mentioned before, like, what if you're not happy with your skill set, right? Like you can learn things. This is the golden age of learning. Everything in the world is a YouTube or Google search away. And to me, that's really, really hopeful no matter where you are. No matter once you come through that diagnostic set, we'll use Jonathan's term, like you can move forward confidently from there, regardless of, hey, I've got an unrivaled skill set, or you know what? Maybe there's not as much here as I'd like. Maybe it's time to learn a couple new things. And then you can again, you could always game this out. Like, where do I want to be? What is the industry that I'm interested in? Like, what would I have to learn? What are the couple of skills? Like you could make this a multi-part exercise that legitimately transforms your life. So yeah, Jonathan. Obviously, I was a little bit uncomfortable with the sandbagging. I'm not going to lie, but that says a lot about me. Um, but this is really important, and I'm glad we did it.
All right, my friends. So we got value from today's episode. Definitely subscribe and share with a friend if you got value. And the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.